welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlo Artist. I'm the moderator of the program and proud principal of Craven Early College High School in New Bern. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hey, my name is Hannah Brown. I'm a fourth grade ELA teacher at Clinton City Schools at Sunset Avenue Elementary, and I have been in education for 6 years now.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Mejia. I'm the NCCAT 2023 North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade multilingual students at C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School in Cabarrus County.
Fantastic.
I am Tanya Smith. I am the 2020 Piedmont Triad Region Teacher of the Year. I teach high school vocal music in Elkin City Schools, and I've been teaching for 28 years.
Wonderful.
Hello, I'm Salem Metzger. I work for North Carolina Education Corps. We are an educational nonprofit that supports high-impact tutors in elementary schools across the state. This is my 20th year as an educator in North Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Metzger. We have a fantastic panel of educators, and we're looking forward to this wonderful conversation because we also have a fantastic guest. Today on Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with Abby Bentley, who is the NCCAT 2024 Empowered North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. Abby is a science teacher at Pisgah High School in Haywood County. Abby, welcome to Craven County. Welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're very excited to chat with you. Been looking forward to this conversation. So, Abby, it's been a little over a month since you were named the Beginning Teacher of the Year. What actually comes to mind when you think about being the North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year? What does that mean to you?
It still does not feel fully real. It all happened very quickly, and I really didn't understand, I guess, how what an honor it was until I was at NCCAT and interacting with the other educators that were there that week, just because they were all incredible. And so I really felt very special just to be interacting with so many like-minded educators that had the same sort of passion and mission to enhance education across the state.
Yes, and you all were there for a week at NCCAT. Take us into that week, Abby. What were you able to experience with your colleagues, and what really made that event special for you?
The people that put together the week at NCCAT did a really fantastic job of pulling in a lot of diverse and really talented speakers that gave us a whole lot to think about as far as classroom management strategies to teaching pedagogy to school systems, all the way up to like state systems. And so that was really insightful just to get a more comprehensive view of what is going on in education across the state, because sometimes we can get trapped in our little bubble in our schools and maybe not look outwards as much. So I found that aspect to be really valuable. And then, of course, just the interaction and the collaboration between the teachers that we had. I think it was really cool that we were able to interact with everybody from different disciplines. We were able to interact with people from different grade levels because everybody can bring in some other, perspective that maybe wasn't considered before in your own realm. And so that, I think, is going to make us all better teachers at the end of the day.
And I think only NCCAT could have such an event in terms of we're recognizing these stellar educators who are entering the field, but also being so intentional about the professional learning aspect. I just love that was able to deepen your knowledge so that you can take that back to the classroom. So, Abby, how did you end up in the classroom? Tell us about your journey to becoming a science teacher, because that wasn't originally your career goal.
Right. Yeah, it was a lateral entry, and it was a kind of messy one, I guess is the best way to put it. So I originally was a research scientist for a couple of years. I did my undergraduate at Radford University in Southwest Virginia, and I was pursuing a degree in biology there. And so I was working in a couple different labs. I was working in our ecotoxicology lab and our organic chemistry lab. And I was studying primarily environmental pollutants, and I was looking at agricultural chemicals and the effects that they could have on reproductive hormones. And so I was doing that work pretty consistently throughout my undergrad. I started as a younger undergraduate researcher. Radford doesn't have science graduate programs, so a lot of the funding kind of trickles down to the undergrads, which is really lucky. And yeah, it's a pretty awesome setup. So little plug for Radford Biology. But then after graduating there, I got a job at East Carolina University, and I was working in one of their toxicology labs there. And I was hired to act as sort of the communication point between the biology and chemistry departments. There's a lot of people in biology that want nothing to do with chemistry, and there's a lot of chemists that want nothing to do with biology. And so my skill set in both kind of made me the candidate for that position. And while I was at that position, it involved a lot of scientific communication, right? So I was explaining to some of the biologists the chemistry side of things and vice versa. And so I started to develop that skill set in communicating my science more and more every year. I was going to a lot of conferences in the research triangle, which was, discussing your research with a lot of pretty large institutions. So, working with the NIH, working with NIEHS, things like that. And so I had to really refine my skills in communicating my science. And as I was developing that, I really found that I was, more talented, I guess I would say, in that communication aspect. And so I found my niche, for lack of a better term, as far as what I wanted to do. So then I toyed around with a couple of nonprofit jobs. I worked at a museum for a little while in science communication. I worked as a reptile handler, talking about like misunderstood animals with people in my community, and just wildlife management in general, and started working with more students. And so I felt like it was a pretty natural solution, I guess you could say, to transition laterally into education. So I went back to Western Carolina University to receive my master's in comprehensive science education. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
That's fantastic. And we know that Western Carolina will prepare you to be a great educator. I'm a proud Catamount myself. What questions do we have for Abby, science teacher at Pisgah High School in Haywood County and the 2024 Empower North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year?
Hi, Abby. I'll get us started. I feel like because I know you personally, I know like this really cool fact about you that I know that all the audience would love to learn about. And it's the fact that you are a beekeeper. And I looked it up and I might pronounce it wrong, but I believe it's called an apparatus, right? Is the scientific name of a beekeeper. So I wanted you to tell us about it and how your students get involved with it.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up, because I do, any chance I get to talk about bees, and I'll try and keep it somewhat short. But yeah, so it was a roundabout way. I am still employed by the nonprofit that I do the bee managing for. So it's called Heights. It's helping instill gifts of hope, trust, and service. And it's a nonprofit that serves all of the western counties of North Carolina. And their mission is to try and connect students with opportunities, resources, for a variety of different reasons. So generally, the students are referred to the program in need of additional support for one reason or another. But one of their missions is to offer recreational experiences, and especially ones that would challenge them to push them beyond their normal limits. And so they came to me and asked me to be a beekeeper. And I told the director, I have no experience in beekeeping. And he was like, you're a biologist, I think you'll figure it out. And I did. So I've been beekeeping this is my 4th season. And one of my favorite parts of it is obviously bringing the students to the hives and getting them all suited up, getting them interacting with the bees in some form or fashion. Right now, I have not gotten any of my classroom students out there. So I've been working with students in the nonprofit and getting them out there, working with other community organizations like the 500 Women Scientists Group that it has a pod in the Asheville area. We've done programming with them out there. Ultimately, one of my main goals would be to work with the animal science teacher at my school and our horticulture teacher to establish a functioning hive at the farm that Pisgah is lucky enough to have right down the road from our campus. So we have a pretty well functioning FFA group and animal science program there. And the Haywood County Beekeepers, which I'm part of their association as well, recently donated a hive to Pisgah. So we were able to install the hive this season. And I am very, very hopeful that we'll be able to get students out there and interacting with the hive, hopefully towards the end of the semester when they really start to pick up in laying the new brood and getting the hive really established as far as like the population numbers go. So ultimately, as an earth science teacher and as somebody that teaches biology, I would be able to use that hive to supplement some of my work that I do with my students. A really obvious way I could use the hive is when I talk about integrated pest management in my earth science class. There's a lot of invasive pests and bee diseases that we as beekeepers have to be knowledgeable about. And so pest management, which is already in the standards, is a really great way to utilize, a live sort of case study to demonstrate how this would work on a larger scale or more broadly in the field.
That is just so cool, obviously. I think I can't wait to go because she said she's gonna take us and we're gonna like put the costumes on, guys, and we're gonna go into the bees. I'm excited. I can't wait. But on that, just a follow-up question, because I know you're passionate, obviously, that comes across your passion for science education. So what do you want the future of STEM to look like, not just in the state of North Carolina, but maybe in the whole country? What would you like it to look like?
I would like it to be less standards based. So a lot of my training at Western, especially in the graduate program, was centered around PBL and IBL, so inquiry-based learning and project-based learning. Unfortunately, our school systems, as they are right now, especially in the public school, are not set up to be conducive to that type of learning, just with how school schedules are structured, and that's a whole nother conversation. But what I would really like to see is the implementation of more true inquiry going on in schools. I think that when I was first becoming a researcher, so I actually I left this out, but I was a nursing student for 2 years before I transitioned to my biology major. And I think I did not start in biology because I was never aware that being a researcher, being a biologist was a job. I don't know who I thought scientists were, but I had no idea. And so it took a professor at Radford to come to me and say, research is a job. You can ask questions as a career. And that's something I think that is not understood widely by a lot of our younger students. You can ask any question about absolutely anything in the entire world, and that can be your career, right? That can be your discipline. If we find the correct avenues for you to go down to study that. And so I would really like to see more career development in STEM. Obviously, more accessibility to STEM across every population and across, unfortunately, it's the reality that our zip code has determined kind of what opportunities we have within our school systems. And so I would really like to see schools and science classes structured in a way that represents how authentic research is actually conducted, how experimental design is conducted, taking students out into the field, connecting them with actual research labs in universities or colleges that are surrounding the school. And some ways that I've been trying to facilitate that at my school is having a lot of guest speakers come in. So I've had people from Appalachian State University, where I've kind of developed a relationship with one of the labs there, Dr. Tuberty's lab. So thank you, Dr. Tuberty. But he's had one of his master's students come down and run a bioindicator study with us at our Pigeon River, which is hugely influential for us, especially because we used to have a paper mill that was kind of the lifeblood of the town that shut down this past year. And so our students are very connected to that river, both economically, environmentally, and personally. It's a recreation site as well. And so having them create, run, and analyze research within that space is really influential for them. It demonstrates skills and gets them practicing and experiencing these skills that actual scientists are using. So it's a great demonstration of what science looks like at a higher level. And it also connects them directly to their own community and to, parameters and metrics that are going on right outside their door that are in fact affecting their health and that are affecting the environment health. And that is really making it the most relevant it could be. So that's what I would really like to see the direction move as far as, across the board in all science classes.
Thank you, Abby. I'm so glad that you're here and we can highlight you tonight. Thanks for coming.
Abby, I have a question. So I am listening to you and I'm just learning so much. And I know all of us are educators that are on this show, but I think we're also lifelong learners. We're also students. And so my question centers around where in your educational journey or in your life are you hungry to continue to be a student? What would you like to learn? I am learning from you by listening, and you're talking about an area of North Carolina that is near and dear to my heart. I love Western North Carolina. So tell me a little bit about what you would like to learn more about as a beginning teacher or a teacher in general. What would you enjoy?
So my passion for science is a little intense sometimes because there's truly no topic within
Vocal
biology.
education. I know.
Yeah, there is no topic too big or different from what I've studied in the past that I wouldn't want to dig into. I'm a little inherently curious about all things science, and that really started from educators in my life that kind of encouraged me to pursue the passion. Um, but sorry, will you repeat your question one more time? I just want to make sure I answer it
Sure,
as best I can.
sure. I just think that in addition to being teachers, we're all really lifelong learners. We like being students as well. I would be a professional student, for example. Like, I just love to learn. And I've been listening to you talk about all of the things that make you passionate. What is something that you would like to learn about, maybe as a teacher, that may be in your field or may not be in your field, or something you could connect to your existing classroom and integrate into your lessons or something like that?
Yeah, I think that as far as like the education aspect of that goes, I would really like to learn more about how I can create more authentic research experiences. Like it really does all kind of come back to that. That is my main mission in the classroom. And so there are some ways that I can do that that to me are pretty obvious because I've been trained in those ways. So looking at like water monitoring, water quality monitoring is something that I did all the time. That's something that it's very easy for me to jump into that. Doing a DNA extraction. I've done that for a really long time. But there are certain elements to earth science, for instance, like the geology aspect that I am super not trained in. You know, I obviously have the knowledge and skill set to teach my content, but I maybe don't have the more refined expertise in that field that I would really like to flesh out a little more so I can start to create some of those more impactful research experiences within every unit instead of just the ones that I myself am most comfortable in at this time.
I would like to follow up by saying, I think that the fact that you can state that there are other things that you would like to learn speaks to your expertise as a teacher. I think that the best teachers are teachers that want to continue to learn to do things, you know, like being a student, a lifelong student. And I really appreciate that about you. That's wonderful.
Thank you. And I would actually like to add to that comment because I find that one of the best ways that I can teach authentic science is by telling my students I don't know. So
Yes.
obviously I don't stop there, but that illustrates that science is not done, right?
Mhm.
Science is a process. We have many unanswered questions. And it's really beautiful that we have the potential to ask all these questions, right, about any topic that we want. But that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about like maintaining the level of curiosity that our students have and kind of trying to cultivate that to any even greater level. Because in some ways I want my kids to leave the classroom having more questions than they do answers that day. That's what scientists do, is they ask questions all day long.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Abby, I guess I'll go next. So your passion for science is like radiating. Like I can feel it. Like I want to be that passionate about science. So I wanted to ask, because I'm passionate about math and now I'm teaching ELA. So this is new for me. But how have you dealt with the fact that you're teaching high school, you're teaching some apathetic 15 to 18-year-olds? What challenges have you had with students not being passionate, and it frustrates you when you see it? You're like, this is so cool, and this is going to be so helpful later in life for you to know this information or to know how to do this, or you could pursue this. So how have you overcome that mentally and within your classroom in order to hopefully make your students passionate about what they're learning?
I appreciate that question. That is a very challenging task, and definitely one of, I think, the hardest aspects of being a teacher at any level really is dealing with apathy, especially as, coming off the heels of COVID. I think that the structure of school at that time was very different and kids got comfortable in that. And now we're asking them to be uncomfortable again by coming back to school. And even though COVID seems like it might have been a while back for other people that maybe aren't working with kids every day, the effects are very apparent still, right? We see the effects of COVID. And I will say, our town in particular, after COVID, we had a really devastating flood that damaged a large portion of our town. And we still have kids that are dealing with the repercussions of that as far as like homelessness and insecurity and their home lives. And even after that, then our community mill of 120 years closed, and we saw an economic sort of collapse, if you will, within our town. That was really scary. And so there's been a lot of change going on in our community that has made it really hard for students to focus their energy on education. So in addition to the regular, I guess, level of apathy of, students just not wanting to go to school because they would rather be doing more fun things, We have all those challenges and all those barriers. And so I will add another kind of layer of complication to that, in that in the last sort of couple of years, we've seen a really dramatic decline in the public's understanding and in the public's trust of science, right? And that is a result of people not having the foundational knowledge of how science is conducted and what science really is, because it's not a topic, it's a process, right? And so I think that dealing with that sort of negative, I'll just call it like overall negative overview or negative outlook of science, the first way I can combat that is by bringing my excitement and my passion. So there's a couple different things that I do in the classroom to start each day off on like a more curious, happy foot instead of just jumping right into content. And my students and I have created something called the Species of the Day, where every day we open class for 5 minutes by talking about some sort of species that they've put a suggestion in, like my little suggestion bag at the front of the room. And I just pick one at the end of every day. And I will write like a 5-minute, slide of the coolest facts and adaptations that I have found about this species. And that's a really great way to grab their attention, because everybody loves a good nature doc, right? So this is like a 5-minute nature doc about some of the coolest animals, and it's animals that they've chosen, right? And it doesn't have to always be animals. Sometimes it's fungus, sometimes it's plants. But that's a really great way to grab attention. Other ways that I try and combat the apathy is by trying to relate what's going on in science to their everyday lives, because as much as people don't want to admit it, everybody is connected to science in some form or fashion. It is obviously where we get all of our natural resources, from our clean water to our air to our, medicines, and, biodiversity is important for all of those sorts of aspects. And so trying to illustrate those connections is really important, because I will admit that even as, a undergraduate, before I really started digging into these sorts of like intricate relationships, I didn't fully understand that. And so how can somebody that's educated, somebody that's had opportunity, somebody that studies that field, doesn't even see those things? How can we expect somebody else, at a lower level, somebody that has not been educated about these things to see them? So I really try and demonstrate those connections and connect the students directly to the content that we're learning, because then they have sort of this emotional investment in understanding it when they see how it's going to impact their lives directly.
Thank you. I love that. And I wanted to follow up because I had 2 questions. So it's kind of related, kind of not, to my first. But like I said, your passion is so evident. I assume that your kids would probably take on that passion, because a lot of times students will, we're kind of like the model for them. And I know they say model your instruction, but even your attitude in your everyday classroom. So I'm glad to hear that you do that with the species. That's cool. And I'd probably love to walk by and be there for that first 5 minutes. But I wanted to also ask, have you had any mentorship other than like an assigned mentor or someone who has really helped you? Because you come from research science, and even though you say you fell right into teaching naturally, it's difficult when you come from a normal public job into working with children every day.
Are you interested? So I think I have a lot of different mentors. Are you interested in hearing like the ones that kind of help me in the education realm?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, who's helped you to contribute to your growth as an educator? And you're the beginning teacher of the year. So who would you maybe not accredit that to, but who has been influential in your teaching career?
Yeah, there's a number of people, and blanket everybody at Pisgah. Everybody at Pisgah High School has been so welcoming. They've surprised me in so many wonderful ways of just like really opening the entire school to me, and giving me a lot of freedom in how I deliver my instruction. Individually, though, Diane Chadwick, the woman who nominated me for the award in the first place, it was our beginning teacher coordinator. Her husband was a teacher at our rival school at Pisgah High School. And I think that she saw that, I really love science, and she saw similarities between, I guess, my passion and the passion that her husband carried, as he was a science teacher. And she really did a lot to cultivate that. She gave me tons of really wonderful feedback, very, very, very specific feedback too. Action items, like what did I do well? What should I always continue doing? What could I improve on? That kind of stuff. And so, she's had been working in Haywood County for, oh my gosh, over 30 years easily. And she's, tried to retire like 3 times, but she keeps coming back for more. And she is tireless. And she's an inspiration every day for me to just keep teaching, because it's amazing to me how someone can have such an incredible impact. And I've only known her for 2 years, and she's just a powerhouse that I absolutely admire. So she's been a huge impact on me. My EC co-teacher as well has really helped me understand. So I teach inclusion classes as well. So the apathy is running real deep there. But my EC teacher has worked with a variety of students from, our academically maybe lower students to AIG students and everyone in between. We've worked with visually impaired students together for the first time, and that was a learning curve. But her willingness to take on pretty much any challenge with any student and deal with that and with a positive attitude has really helped me as well. So she's kind of somebody that I turn to in my day to bring me back down to earth when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, or remind me, where my passion is. She really will bring me back to like, hey, you like science, so that's why you're here. You're not here to solve every issue in education today, And so having those people has been really helpful for me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Well, I can say as a mother of 2 school-age children, it is really encouraging to hear you talk about your work so passionately. And so I know there's been a lot of talk about teacher effectiveness and how we best measure that. And so I wonder, what are your markers for success? Like, how do you know that you're doing well?
When a kid is having a good time and smiling and laughing while they're not looking at their phone in class. If I can have a student smiling and laughing while they're looking through a microscope, or while they are, working on a lab of some sort, that to me is really exciting. I try to use microscopes as often as possible. I think that's like a portal to another world, there's so many opportunities to use them in my biology class. Every unit has sort of like a structural part of the cell that we can try and look at, as long as our microscopes, they're not the most powerful thing in the world, but as long as the structures are large enough to see under our microscope, you better believe I'm going to use them. And I think that, yes, trying to get them to find humor in the day, find levity in the day. I feel like oftentimes at schools, we take things so seriously. We get, all wrapped up in test scores. We get all wrapped up in you didn't do your homework. We really are quick to place blame on students, instead of viewing school as a place where they are supposed to come to become better humans, right? We are supposed to be demonstrating for them what being an adult looks like, right? Managing our own emotions. And too often I feel like we see in schools that adults are not managing their emotions well. And so I really try and demonstrate that you can have a great time while you learn. Some of my best memories of my life are when I am out learning something about science. And so I want to demonstrate that you can have a great time, and you don't have to be serious all the time to be learning. Those things are, not mutually exclusive or whatever. You can do them together. And so that's always my goal in the classroom every day. And that's when I feel like I've been successful, is when students are genuinely enjoying the time that they are spending in my classroom, but they're also achieving the academic goals that we set for that day.
Excellent. It sounds like you've had a lot of just a wealth of prior experiences. And so I wonder, how has teaching maybe differed from your expectations going in?
I definitely thought I was going to be able to walk in and use my content knowledge alone. That was kind of my false expectation off the bat. I was under this impression that since I have my bachelor's in biology, I understand how science is done. I understand the research. I can walk in there and I will just tell them. I'll just tell them, how easy could that be? And then you get in there and you realize it's absolutely not that easy, for so many different reasons that we don't have time to get into. But I think that was my biggest hurdle, is realizing that you are going to have to restructure how you deliver this information to become more enjoyable for, a different demographic than you're used to talking to. And then I really had no idea how well versed I was going to have to become, and I'm thankful for this, but how well versed I was going to have to become in differentiation strategies for a lot of my students. I mean, I don't think many people have any idea how difficult it is to reach the 30 different kids that are in your classroom on a given day, when some of them academically are up here and some of them are struggling to read. I'm teaching reading comprehension some days in a biology class for juniors, and that's not necessarily their fault, right? There's obviously lots of things going on that have gotten them to this point. But that is the reality that I'm working with, right? And so if I'm trying to get kids to pass an EOC at the end of the year state exam that has very challenging, critical thinking biology questions on it, and they are having trouble just reading the questions, there's a bigger issue there that we have to address. And so approaching the student as a whole person instead of just this is a biology class and we're learning biology in here was a huge learning curve, but one that I'm very thankful that I was able to understand early on, because I think that's part of the reason that I was able to win this award is the experiences that I've had in the classrooms and how I've responded to these students. And again, it's not just me, it's my EC teacher, it's my mentors, it's everybody that has given me the skills to be able to do that.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your time and perspective tonight. What a treat to get to hear from you.
Thank you.
Most certainly, Abby, this has been a pleasure to have you on the program. I'm just sitting here listening to you and I'm in awe. And so proud to be in your company. I'm going to be in the same profession as you. Abby, what makes you proud to be a North Carolina public school educator?
I'm just proud to be part of the larger education community. I think that beyond all the noise and the negativity in education, there are individuals that are working incredibly hard to make sure that students have opportunities, that students have a voice, that students are being heard and cared for. And it is those people that make me want to stay in education and will keep me in education, because their hard work cannot go unnoticed and their hard work deserves recognition. And the more we work together to create that future that we're all envisioning, the faster we're going to get there and the better it will be for our kids.
Absolutely. Abby, you have an open invitation to come on this program and you can continue to tell us all about all the science that you are investigating with your students and what you all are unpacking, because you're very impressive and I know you're doing great work in Haywood County, and we appreciate you helping to tell your story here on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
I'm so thankful that y'all gave me the opportunity to share some of what we're doing over at Pisgah. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We'd like to thank our audience so very much for watching our program. We hope that you'll engage us on our social media platforms. Please like our Facebook page. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHeelTeachers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarheelteachers.com. And on all of our social media platforms, please use our hashtag #TarHeelTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. I'd like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Hannah Brown, Natalia Mejia, Tanya Smith, and Dr. Salem Metzger. And once again, we'd like to thank our special guest for joining us, Abby Bentley. She's the NCCAT 2024 Empower North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. And we're so happy that we had this time with her. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.